1968 changed everything. While protesters filled the streets, Hollywood took risks it would never dare take again. Some gambles became legends, others vanished without a trace, buried by their own ambition or forgotten by audiences chasing the next thing. These 10 films represent the road not taken, movies that should have mattered but slipped through history's cracks. Franco Nero needed escape. As an artist drowning in the noise of Milan, he retreated to a crumbling villa in the Italian countryside, searching for silence and inspiration. What he found instead was madness. Elio Petri's psychological thriller opens with Nero tied to a chair in his studio, wearing nothing but a diaper, while Vanessa Redgrave teases him. It's pure pop art chaos, the kind of opening that makes you question everything that follows. Is this real? Is any of it real? Petri never bothered to answer that question, and that's exactly what makes the film so unsettling. The villa holds secrets. A young woman, the previous owner's daughter, perished there during World War II. Her spirit, or perhaps just Nero's unraveling mind, begins to haunt him. He conducts seances, chases ghosts through abandoned rooms, and slowly loses his grip on reality. American pop artist Jim Dine created actual canvases for the film, abstract expressionist works that appear under the opening titles and in subsequent scenes. Petri, who collected paintings himself, understood that artists live on the edge of sanity, that the creative process and mental collapse sometimes occupy the same territory. Despite winning the Silver Bear at the Berlin Film Festival, the film disappeared. Even today, with Blu-ray releases from specialty labels, it remains deeply obscure. Critics called it pretentious, audiences found it baffling, and Petri's career moved in different directions. But there's something hypnotic about watching Nero's character dissolve, about seeing Redgrave's materialistic girlfriend try to profit from his breakdown. The film predicts our modern obsession with artists as brands, with creativity as commodity. It just did it 50 years too early for anyone to notice. Michael Sarne wanted to capture swinging London before it stopped swinging. His directorial debut follows a naive art student who arrives in the city and throws herself into a world of casual encounters, interracial romances, and psychedelic excess. The film opens in stark black and white before exploding into vibrant color as Joanna discovers freedom's pleasures and dangers. Genevieve Waite, a South African model with zero acting experience, plays the title character with breathy innocence that either charms or grates. What makes the film notable isn't its thin plot or Waite's divisive performance. It's the cultural documentation. Janis Joplin appears briefly. The film captures genuine hippie extras, real London locations, and the tail end of an era about to implode. Sarne secured a budget from 20th Century Fox after the film found modest success in America, and the studio made a catastrophic decision. They hired him to direct Myra Breckinridge, one of the most reviled films in Hollywood history. That disaster buried Sarne's career and took Joanna down with it. The movie drags. Rod McKuen's score tries too hard to be hip. Donald Sutherland shows up as a lisping aristocrat with an accent that wanders across 3 continents. But underneath the dated fashion and fuzzy focus, there's something honest about how it portrays a young woman treating liberation like a game she doesn't quite understand. The film ends on a regressive note, suggesting that freedom without consequence was always a lie. Critics at Cannes pelted Sarne's Rolls-Royce with eggs. The film bombed in Britain. Today, only completists remember it exists, preserved as a curious artifact of a moment that promised everything and delivered confusion. Alan Bates spent 2 hours and 12 minutes getting beaten, humiliated, and broken. John Frankenheimer's adaptation of Bernard Malamud's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel follows a Jewish handyman in Tsarist Russia who gets falsely accused of ritual slaying a Ukrainian boy. The charges are absurd, the evidence fabricated, but the Russian government needs a scapegoat to distract from its own corruption. Bates, playing Yakov Bach, endures imprisonment, psychological torment, and systematic dehumanization while refusing to confess to something he didn't do. Frankenheimer shot the film in Hungary, working under pressure with a cast and crew that grew to despise him. Dirk Bogarde later called the director Frankenstein. The atmosphere behind the cameras infected what appeared on screen. The film feels oppressive, deliberately paced to mirror Bach's suffering. Bates earned an Oscar nomination, his only one, for a performance requiring him to age decades over the story's course. Critics found it too heavy-handed. Roger Ebert complained that Frankenheimer and Trumbo didn't trust audiences to understand character motivations, resulting in explanatory speeches that spelled out everything. The film runs long, the pacing drags, and the message about prejudice gets hammered home with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Despite the prestige attached to the project, it faded quickly from memory. Bates moved on to better roles. Frankenheimer's reputation dimmed, and The Fixer became a footnote, a worthy but dreary meditation on injustice that nobody wanted to endure twice. MGM bet big on religion. The studio spent millions recreating the Sistine Chapel, assembling a cast including Anthony Quinn, Laurence Olivier, John Gielgud, and others. The story imagines a Russian archbishop released from a Siberian labor camp who unexpectedly becomes pope. Quinn plays Kirill Lakota, a man who survived 20 years of imprisonment and now must navigate Vatican politics while preventing nuclear conflict. The film runs 2 hours and 40 minutes, complete with overture and intermission. MGM marketed it as a roadshow attraction, the kind of prestige event that demanded reserved seating and premium ticket prices. The strategy failed. By late 1968, audiences no longer cared about bloated epics. The younger crowd that Hollywood desperately needed to attract had zero interest in Vatican intrigue. Older viewers showed up, but not in sufficient numbers to justify the enormous budget. What's fascinating about the film is how it predicted John Paul II a decade before Karol Wojtyla's election. The idea of a non-Italian pope from an Eastern European country seemed wildly speculative in '68. By '78, it became reality. Quinn's performance avoids bombast, playing Kirill with unexpected humility and doubt. The film questions faith, power, and whether institutional religion can address human suffering. It just does so at such length and with such reverence that modern audiences would struggle to sit through it. The film lost money, contributed to MGM's financial crisis, and largely vanished from discussion. Cinephiles joke about Zorba the Pope, reducing Quinn's nuanced work to punchline status. Yet, there's real intelligence buried in the Vatican procedural sequences, genuine tension in the geopolitical crisis, and thoughtful examination of what leadership means when the stakes involve millions of lives. It deserved better than Obscurity, even if it desperately needed trimming. Richard Lester captured the summer of love as it curdled. Shooting in San Francisco during '67, he documented a city in transition, catching genuine performances by the Grateful Dead and Big Brother and the Holding Company before transforming that footage into something darker. Julie Christie plays the title character, a socialite trapped in an abusive marriage who fixates on George C. Scott's recently divorced doctor. The film jumps between timelines, mixing color and black and white, blurring fantasy and reality until viewers lose track of what actually happened. Nicholas Roeg's cinematography creates a world of reflections and surfaces, everything beautiful and hollow. Lester uses quick cuts and fragmented editing to mirror the emotional chaos, the sense that everyone's lying to themselves about who they are and what they want. Richard Chamberlain plays Christie's husband with terrifying restraint, a handsome sociopath whose violence erupts without warning. The film examines the emptiness of privilege, the casual cruelty of people who have everything material but nothing meaningful. John Haas, who wrote the source novel, hated what Lester did to his story. He complained that the director gutted the characters and replaced them with mod aesthetics and cultural commentary. Critics divided sharply. Roger Ebert called it desperately unhappy, yet perfect, unable to find a single flaw despite finding it almost unbearable to watch. Pauline Kael dismissed it as bloodless and disagreeable. The film failed commercially, cementing Lester's reputation as a brilliant stylist whose ambitions exceeded audience patience. Today, Petulia has a small but devoted following among film scholars who recognize it as a pinnacle of '60s New Hollywood experimentation. Everyone else has never heard of it. The film's fragmented structure feels modern, its critique of American materialism remains relevant, and the performances cut deeper than the typical '60s psychedelic fare. But it requires patience, demands engagement, and offers no easy catharsis. It's the kind of film that gets taught in university courses while general audiences scroll past it on streaming platforms. Burt Lancaster called it his best work. Based on John Cheever's New Yorker short story, the film follows an advertising executive who decides to swim home through his neighbor's backyard pools. What begins as a whimsical adventure becomes a devastating examination of denial, failure, and self-deception. Each pool brings a new encounter, another person from Lancaster's past who reveals pieces of the truth he's been avoiding. A former mistress confronts him with bitterness. A friend he owes money avoids him. A young woman who idolized him as a teenager sees through his desperation. Lancaster was 54 when he shot the film, in remarkable physical condition but unable to disguise aging creeping into his face and posture. The role required him to wear nothing but swim trunks for the entire runtime, exposing himself literally and figuratively. He paid for extra shooting days when the budget ran out. The production troubled, with director Frank Perry fired and Sidney Pollack brought in for reshoots. But Lancaster's commitment never wavered. The film flopped upon release. Audiences expecting a light comedy about suburban life got existential dread instead. Critics appreciated its ambition but found it too stylized, too literary, too committed to its allegorical structure to work as entertainment. Over time, the film gained cult status among cinephiles who recognized it as a unique achievement, a mainstream Hollywood production that embraced the experimental techniques of European art cinema. The final scene remains devastating. Lancaster pounds on the door of his abandoned, decaying house in the rain, the camera holding on his face as he realizes there's nothing left. No family, no home, no future. Just the consequences of choices he can no longer remember making. Roger Ebert called it strange and disturbing, a brilliant film that defied categorization. Most of the public never saw it. Even now, it exists on the periphery, known to film buffs but invisible to everyone else. Julie Andrews could do no wrong. Fresh from Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, she seemed like a guaranteed box office draw. Producer Robert Wise and 20th Century Fox bet $14 million that audiences would embrace her portrayal of Gertrude Lawrence, a theatrical legend largely unknown to moviegoers in 1968. They were catastrophically wrong. The film earned only $4.2 million, a financial disaster that nearly destroyed Andrews' career and contributed to the collapse of the big-budget Hollywood musical. The film runs nearly 3 hours, connecting musical numbers with minimal plot. Andrews performs brilliantly in the staged sequences, demonstrating Lawrence's versatility and showmanship. Daniel Massey earned an Oscar nomination for his Noel Coward portrayal. The production values are lavish, costumes spectacular, choreography exhausting, but none of it matters because the script fails to make Lawrence interesting or sympathetic. We watch her quarrel with colleagues, abandon her daughter, and prioritize career over relationships. The film makes no attempt to soften these flaws or provide context that would help audiences connect with her. Andrews, playing against her wholesome image, brings nuance to the role, but the screenplay gives her nothing to work with beyond ambition and narcissism. Critics recognized the craft but couldn't recommend sitting through the experience. Audiences stayed away in droves. Fox panicked, cutting 20 minutes and re-releasing the film under the desperate title, "Those Were the Happy Times." The new marketing campaign achieved nothing except advertising the studio's desperation. The film exists now primarily as a cautionary tale, a reminder that success doesn't guarantee anything and that audiences won't accept stars in roles that contradict their established personas. Andrews recovered eventually, but Star remains her most famous failure, known for flopping rather than for anything actually on screen. John Cassavetes mortgaged everything to make this film. Shooting on 16mm black and white stock, using his house as a location, he spent months crafting a story about a marriage disintegrating in real time. The film follows a businessman who announces he wants a divorce, then spends the night with an escort while his wife parties and picks up a younger man. Both attempt to escape loneliness through connection, but connection proves impossible. The performances are raw, uncomfortable, deliberately amateurish in the best sense. Cassavetes encouraged improvisation, pushed actors beyond their comfort zones, and held the camera inches from their faces as they screamed, laughed, and broke down. Lynn Carlin, who had no acting experience before being cast as the wife, earned an Oscar nomination for a performance of devastating authenticity. Seymour Cassel, playing the escort, received similar recognition. The film cost $200,000 and looked like it cost nothing, which was exactly Cassavetes' intention. Critics divided sharply. Some praised it as the future of American independent cinema, a breakthrough that proved personal films could find commercial success. Pauline Kael hated it, calling the performances badly executed and the scenes crudely conceived. Roger Ebert championed it as astonishing, a film that examined how people actually live rather than Hollywood's sanitized version of existence. The film earned 3 Oscar nominations and influenced an entire generation of directors, including Scorsese, Altman, and Woody Allen, but mainstream audiences never embraced it. The film runs over 2 hours, moves at a glacial pace, and offers no resolution or hope. Characters drink, argue, and hurt each other, then wake up the next morning to do it again. Cassavetes originally cut a 6-hour version before trimming it down. The film succeeded in art house theaters and film festivals, establishing Cassavetes as a major independent voice. It remains well known in film school circles, studied for its techniques and influence. General audiences have never heard of it. Lindsay Anderson gave Malcolm McDowell a machine cannon for the finale. The film's climactic sequence shows rebellious students opening fire on parents, teachers, and establishment figures during a school ceremony, a surreal explosion of violence that blurs the line between fantasy and revolution. McDowell, making his screen debut, plays Mick Travis, a romantic rebel at a traditional English boarding school where older students torture younger ones and authority figures remain oblivious or complicit. The film alternates between color and black and white seemingly at random, creating ambiguity about what's real and what's imagined. Anderson claimed the switches resulted from practical concerns about lighting the chapel, but the effect serves the story. We're never certain whether Travis is planning actual rebellion or simply dreaming of it. The film captures the spirit of May '68 in Paris, the sense that young people worldwide were ready to burn down systems they didn't create and didn't believe in. Anderson shot at his alma mater after other schools discovered the script's content and refused permission. The final confrontation on the rooftop was filmed at Cheltenham College after term ended. The film won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, establishing Anderson as a major director and launching McDowell's career. Stanley Kubrick saw the performance and cast McDowell in A Clockwork Orange, telling him to recreate the smile Travis gives before being beaten, that ironic grin that suggests the rebel has already won regardless of physical consequences. British audiences recognize the film as essential, a perfect satire of the public school system that shapes the country's ruling class. American audiences struggled with the setting and the ambiguous ending. The film has strong recognition among cinephiles and British film fans, but remains relatively unknown to general viewers who've never attended boarding school and don't understand the specific hierarchies being satirized. It's a masterpiece that requires cultural context to fully appreciate. Brilliant if you have the key, opaque if you don't. Everyone knows Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, or at least everyone in Britain does. The film has become a beloved family classic, the kind of movie that gets watched every Christmas and remembered fondly by multiple generations. But here's the thing, nobody remembers. It lost United Artists $8 million during its initial theatrical release. Despite being the 10th most popular film at the US box office in 1969, its massive budget meant financial disaster. Producer Albert Broccoli, fresh from James Bond's success, assembled the team behind Mary Poppins for another musical fantasy. Dick Van Dyke leads as an eccentric inventor who rebuilds a junked racing car into a flying machine. The Sherman brothers wrote the songs. Roald Dahl co-wrote the screenplay based on Ian Fleming's only children's book. The production spent $10 to $12 million creating elaborate sets, including a Bavarian castle and a massive recreation of an Edwardian mill house. The film runs 2 hours and 24 minutes, too long for restless children. The musical numbers stop the plot rather than advancing it. The villain, Baron Bombast, is played as broad comedy rather than genuine threat, but none of that mattered in the long run. The film found its audience on television through repeated broadcasts and home video releases. Children who grew up watching it developed genuine affection for its innocent charms, its celebration of imagination and family. Unlike the other films on this list, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang achieved cultural immortality despite initial failure. It became a successful stage musical in 2002. The car itself is now iconic, recognized immediately by audiences in the UK. The title song remains embedded in popular consciousness. It proves that box office disappointment doesn't necessarily mean permanent obscurity. Sometimes a film just needs time to find the people who will love it. These 10 films represent different kinds of failure. Some were too experimental, others too conventional. Some aimed at audiences that didn't exist. Others made for audiences who had moved on. A few found second lives through home video and streaming, while others remained stubbornly obscure despite their quality. What unites them is that 1968 gave them permission to exist, to take risks that seem impossible now in an era of market research and brand management. Hollywood bet on artists who had vision but no guarantee of success. Most of those bets failed commercially. But the films themselves endure as evidence of a moment when the industry still believed in gambling on something beyond the formula, even if audiences weren't always ready to follow.